The day Benjamin's true love returned to the country, he set fire to their marital home. Aside from the pair of twins she had borne him, he took nothing. At that time, when she was gravely ill and urgently needed a kidney transplant, he made the decision to donate his kidney to her. But she believed he was scheming to marry her, breaking up her relationship with her true love. Now he had finally let go and faked his own death to leave. However, when she learned of his supposed death, she completely collapsed. Mid-Autumn Festival is a time for family reunions, and it also happens to be the children's birthday. The children begged Emily for a long time before she finally relented and agreed to come home for once. She casually mentioned wanting home-cooked food, so Benjamin, despite feeling feverish, forced himself to cook a full table of dishes. By now the food had long cooled, and the children were still guarding the cake, unwilling to sleep. Emily never showed up. Dizzy, he hastily took a fever medicine and went outside. He knew where she was. Whenever she was upset, she would always go to her girlfriends to talk things out. The lights in the villa's yard were still on, and Emily was sitting with a few friends drinking. Gabriel is returning to his country, and that Benjamin who married into your family along with your twins, what do you plan to do about them? Benjamin froze in mid-knock, unable to bring himself to knock. Emily's delicate features were somewhat distorted in the light, her brows furrowed in distress. Divorce. The children will stay with him so Gabriel won't be upset when he sees them. Emily's reply was cold and resolute, but it was exactly what he expected. After all, if her grandfather hadn't forced her to marry him before his death, Gabriel wouldn't have gone abroad and disappeared. So their wedding was met with her disappearance as protest. A son-in-law who came to the door, and the bride ran away on the spot. Benjamin instantly became the laughingstock of the entire city. A year into their marriage, they didn't see each other. Then in a night of foolishness, they had a pair of twins. When the children were born, Emily showed no affection at all, scolding the nurses to quickly take the babies away, refusing to look at them because they were the proof of her betrayal of her true love. On the day she promised to come home for the children's birthday, Benjamin naively believed that the ice-cold beauty would finally melt. In the silence, someone spoke. Actually, your husband has been quite good to you. Though the family went bankrupt, he used his connections to get you many resources. His health never recovered, and he even drank with clients until he had a gastric hemorrhage, but still stayed by your side to help build your company. This was immediately rebutted by another friend. Without him, Emily could have still become bigger and stronger. If it weren't for that bastard who went and donated his kidney, Emily's grandfather wouldn't have forced her to marry him, and she wouldn't have missed so many years with Gabriel. A man who married into the family and lives off others, really thinking he's still that high and mighty young master, should just be discarded. Emily's cold voice interrupted the conversation. Talking about him is so boring. Drink. One of the women laughed seductively and suddenly spoke. By the way, Benjamin does have a good face. He was once quite sought after. Since you don't want him anymore, why not let the sisters try what it's like? Just think of him as a male model. Laughter echoed, but Emily remained silent, simply raising her champagne glass and emptying it. Benjamin often feels that his life hasn't gone as he expected. It keeps veering off track, sailing into every snowstorm. He met Emily at a charity auction held at his house. At that time, he was the powerful young master of the Sue family, and Emily was just a small business owner of a startup. She didn't even have a ticket to the event and had to get one from a friend. Among the auctioned items was one of his paintings. The rich and powerful kept raising the prices, hoping to attach themselves to the Sue family. Only a girl in the corner stared at his painting without blinking. The painting was titled Mother, and it was his favorite work. As she gazed at it, a tear fell from the corner of her eye. Perhaps noticing that he was watching her, Emily stepped back, her gaze timid. "Mr. Sue, your painting is wonderful, but I can't afford it." A breeze of warmth brushed his heart, making it beat wildly. Later he learned that Emily had lost her parents early, and her grandfather had raised her alone. His painting deeply moved her, so he gave her the painting, which started a 6-year-long unrequited love. Emily always remained distant and reserved, but never explicitly rejected him. He kept fantasizing about winning her over with sincerity. For that reason, he introduced her to many top-tier resources and watched as her company grew bigger and bigger. However, the Sue family fell in one day, and Benjamin was the last one left. and he too was only alive in body. Later, disregarding his cousin's strong objections, he donated his kidney to Emily. The after effects of the surgery nearly cost him his life, and he was forced to put down his paintbrush. Grandpa Song knew how much the Song family owed him, so before his death, he forced Emily to marry him. Emily couldn't bring herself to refuse, but her condition was that he would marry into her family. After the marriage, he learned that the man she truly wanted to marry was someone else. The place of her husband would always belong to that man. That year, during Mid-Autumn Festival, Emily, still drunk, came home for the first time. He originally only wanted to help her to the bedroom to rest. She tightly embraced him, reeking of alcohol. She was like a slippery snake, her hands sliding across his body, winding tighter and tighter. "Kiss me," she said. In a moment of impulse, he made a grave mistake. When he woke up, Emily was clutching the blanket, tears in her eyes, and slapped his face. "Isn't marrying me enough for you? How could you do such a low thing? You disgusting man." He thought from the beginning everything was wrong. He should have left long ago. He wearily returned to the villa, the marital cage that trapped both Emily and him. The children were indeed still awake, rushing over and hugging his legs tightly. "Daddy, has Mommy come back too?" They then ran happily to the door, only to return disheartened, their spirits deflated. Pax's little face turned red with emotion as he cried out loudly, "Does Mommy not want us anymore?" His heart felt as if it was gripped by a large hand, both aching and suffocating. He crouched down and hugged them. "Daddy wants you, come with Daddy, okay?" He couldn't bear to tell them that in fact, their mother didn't want them at all. Both the children and him were obstacles to her happiness. Serena, acting like a little adult, patted his shoulder. "Daddy, don't be sad. Wherever you go, we'll go with you." After finally managing to get them to sleep, he collapsed into the bathroom. He turned on the water and let it flow over his head, washing away the tears that wouldn't stop. The sound of the trickling water covered the sobs, giving him the last bit of dignity he had as a man. As his children's father, they had never known a moment of joy. From the moment Emily found out she was pregnant, she wanted to abort them every single day. It wasn't until the doctor said that if she aborted them, she could never have children again that she reluctantly gave up, because she still wanted to have children with Gabriel. After the twins were born, when the nurse handed her the 2 little bundles, her first reaction was to turn away in disgust, scolding the nurse to take them far away because just looking at them made her feel sick. Benjamin had to play both the role of father and mother, raising the children on his own. To the outside world, she never acknowledged them as her own. She would even scold the children when they called her mommy. They were her own flesh and blood, yet she treated them worse than strangers. Whenever the children would hopefully ask if Mommy was coming back, Benjamin would invent one excuse after another. In the end, even the children started saying that Daddy only lied to them. Leaving was a relief for everyone. Perhaps Emily suddenly remembered the promise she made to the children late at night. She returned. Benjamin was packing his things when he suddenly heard Emily's cold voice from behind. "What are you doing?" He turned around to meet Emily's gaze, heavy with the influence of alcohol, her expression betraying a hint of something unusual. He tried to keep his tone calm. "I couldn't sleep, just tidying up the house." The smell of alcohol filled the air, and the cool breeze from the window sent a shiver down his overheated body. Suddenly, Emily leaned forward and crashed into his arms, her voice almost pleading. "Stay with me, Gabriel." She was so drunk that she mistook him for Gabriel. Before he could push her away, she tiptoed and kissed him on the lips. Her lips pried his open, and the intoxicating scent of alcohol surged inside him. Her delicate fingers fumbled with the buttons of his shirt, as if she couldn't wait a second longer. In his ears, he suddenly heard the teasing remark she had made earlier with her girlfriends. Just think of him as a male model. Humiliation, pain, overwhelming emotions. It almost suffocated him entirely. He couldn't endure it any longer and harshly pushed her away. "If you like Gabriel, you should have never agreed to marry me in the first place. Why torture each other like this now, despising each other? I'm a man, and even if I love, I still have my dignity." There was no reply. Emily's eyes gradually became clearer, filled with endless resentment. He ignored her and continued packing his things. She suddenly grabbed his wrist, but when her hand touched his skin, her face froze for a moment. "You have a fever. You're a grown man, and you can't even take care of yourself. She tried to reach for his forehead, but he easily dodged her touch. She clicked her tongue in frustration. So you came to find me. What did you hear? Benjamin no longer cared. Everything spilled out of his mouth. You think Gabriel went abroad because of you and me getting married? He's just afraid you'd make him donate a kidney. How dare you slander him? Emily picked up a glass water cup and threw it at him. He didn't dodge. The cup hit his forehead with a heavy thud. The glass shattered on the floor, mixing with his blood. It was the same. In her eyes, he was just like that glass cup, capable of holding all her negative emotions, and it didn't matter if he was shattered. Thick blood smeared across his eyes. In the blur, he seemed to see Emily nervously reaching for him, but she pulled her hand back. She stood there, cold as ice. You wanted me to come back and I have, that's enough. Then the sound of her high heels faded into the night. Along with it, his heart, still stubbornly tangled, disappeared as well. The next day, after Emily sobered up, she had her secretary deliver birthday gifts for the children. The children threw them straight at the door. Pax looked disgusted. It's not even my birthday today. What's the point of giving me this now? Serena was upset. I wanted Mommy to come home before because I wanted her to be with Daddy, but now that Daddy doesn't want Mommy, we don't want Mommy either. Unloved children live cautiously from a young age. At just over 2 years old, they already carry a maturity that doesn't match their age, so thoughtful it breaks your heart. Serena asked him in her soft voice, Daddy, where are we going? He patted her head and told her, We're going to Grandma's old home. The Sioux family estate had long been sold, and now the only place they could go was to the old house in the countryside where his mother lived. Mom had tried many times to bring Grandma to the big city, but Grandma always refused, unwilling to leave her hometown. That's why Mom often took him to the countryside to stay with Grandma and keep her company. There's Northwest Amusement Park, no tall buildings, but there are birds singing, flowers blooming, and little bridges over running water. The two chubby little bundles of joy tightly hugged him, silencing the words he was about to say. With Daddy, anywhere is the best place. Lately, both Emily and Benjamin have been quite busy. She's preparing to bring Gabriel back to the country while he's preparing to take the children with him. After all, she's long gotten used to being in control. If he wants to leave, he must make sure he's fully prepared. Although the children say they don't want Mommy, the day before they were supposed to leave, they still stared at Emily's photo, reluctant to part with it. After hesitating several times, he dialed Emily's number. The call connected, and she was still impatient. What is it? The children want to see you one last time. Would you come back for a visit? Would she come back for the last time? Emmy, if you're busy, I'll just fly back abroad. It seems I'm not that important. It was Gabriel's voice. Emily hurriedly explained. You are important, he's nothing. Then the phone call ended. When fate is over, even a final meeting is a luxury. The portrait he gave her was still hanging by the bed, and he could still vaguely remember the tear that glistened in Emily's eye. He lit a lighter and set it ablaze. The fire spread wildly over the room's flammable items, quickly engulfing the entire villa. His marriage with Emily began with this portrait, and it ended with this portrait. The flames shot into the sky, and his children and him stood silhouetted against the firelight, holding hands, not looking back. Emily, the freedom you wanted, I've returned it to you. The fire was so fierce that it burned everything eternal to ash. He took the children back to Grandma's old house in a small tourist town where tourists frequently passed by. After Grandma passed away, everything in the house remained the same, just covered in layers of dust. He brushed off the dust, and it felt as though he could still see Grandma holding a big watermelon, calling him to come eat. She would cut it in half, worried that he wouldn't have enough, and would give him a spoon to scoop and eat. Her wrinkled eyes would light up with joy, laughing as he ate, and became a little messy. He lived with the children quietly and peacefully, learning from Grandma's way of life. They carried their hoes and tidied up the overgrown yard. He planned to fix the place up and open his own DIY shop here in the future, selling local tourist souvenirs. The news reported the fire at the Song family villa where Emily's husband and their twin children were suspected to have perished in the blaze. While the raging fire consumed everything, Emily was in a hotel, spending time with Gabriel. Gabriel had rushed back to the country without enough preparation and was grinning wickedly as he said he was going to the pharmacy to buy tonight's essentials, and Emily surely knew what Gabriel was implying. After Gabriel left, Emily placed her hand on her chest, testing her own feelings. Strangely, there was no overwhelming excitement as she had imagined. Her heartbeat remained steady. So when Gabriel eagerly threw himself at her, she instinctively rejected the man she had longed for, pushing him away without thinking. "Sorry, there's something urgent at the company. I need to go." She fled, even though she couldn't understand why she had become like this. Actually, the night with Benjamin, she wasn't so drunk that she couldn't distinguish between Gabriel and Benjamin. Under the influence of alcohol, her body instinctively wanted to be close to him, as close as possible, blurring the lines between them. When she woke up, regret consumed her, and she habitually blamed Benjamin for everything. After all, he had always tolerated her. When she heard the news of the villa fire, Emily was momentarily stunned. A twinge of regret quietly took over her mind. She couldn't help but think, if she had gone back that day, would this have never happened? Yet she still hoped, thinking it was just one of Benjamin's tricks. This man, as usual, was shameless and would stop at nothing to achieve his goals. "What is he trying now?" she said, filled with disdain. It wasn't until the secretary handed her the items found at the scene that the truth began to sink in. It was a charred wedding ring and 2 half-burned gifts. The wedding ring was the only link between Benjamin and her. He had cherished it, never taking it off. And there were the birthday gifts she had bought for the children. It seemed that the packaging hadn't even been opened before the ruthless fire destroyed them. The fire started in the bedroom. It looks like he started it himself. The door was locked from the inside. No one could escape the fire. Emily staggered for a moment. "You're saying he gave up the chance to escape and would rather burn to death with the children in our marital home?" Emily couldn't believe it. She had to expose the man's trickery. She staggered into the ruins, her pale fingers desperately trying to dig out some sign of Benjamin's survival. If he dared to deceive her, she would make him pay dearly for it. There was nothing left at the scene except ashes. The children's gifts were thrown outside the door, leaving only half of them behind. As for Benjamin, there was nothing left. She had always thought of Benjamin as an aloof young master whose love was just a passing whim. Later, she began to think that Benjamin, willing to donate a kidney to turn his life around, and the children he had been forced to have, were disgusting. Now with his death, he had severed all connections, yet she didn't feel happy at all. That night, Emily had a dream. In the dream, she went as promised to celebrate the children's birthday. The children happily unwrapped the gifts, jumping around her, affectionately calling her mommy. She didn't mistakenly call out the man's name, but affectionately called him Ben. She wasn't cruel enough to strike Benjamin on the forehead, but kissed him deeply instead. When Benjamin called her to see the children, she happily agreed to meet him. The family sat together, laughing and talking. In her dream, Emily smiled softly, as if savoring the beauty of that moment. But after a sudden thunderclap, Emily woke up with a start. She reached for the empty space beside her bed and fully awakened. As for the dream, she found it laughable. How could she ever want to live with such a despicable man? She must have been frightened by the fire, and that was all. Benjamin was dead, like a drop of water disappearing into the ocean. Emily kept telling herself that her heart would no longer be stirred. Meanwhile, Benjamin and his children were living a carefree life in the countryside, happier than they had been in the big city. In the past, he would have a whole amusement park as a birthday gift. Now, relying on his own skills, he could still provide a good life for the children. Soon, the children reached school age. Since his artistic taste was quite good, his small shop gradually became well known and more tourists came to visit. Many female tourists wanted to take photos with him or asked for his contact information, but he politely declined. 2 years passed. Occasionally people would introduce him to potential matches. The women didn't want a dowry and were willing to accept the children. They mostly liked him because he was hardworking, good-looking, and had a good character. He would always smile and politely refuse. Then one day, the children saw their mother on television again. Now Emily had become more successful, an influential financial woman being interviewed. Gabriel, of course, was by her side. A nosy reporter asked Emily, "Miss Song, your husband has been dead for 2 years. When do you plan to marry Emily?" Emily's face showed displeasure, and before she could speak, Gabriel immediately answered, "Good things are coming soon, so stay tuned." The children turned around and saw him watching. They immediately turned off the TV. He smiled indifferently. Today's a break. Let's go catch some lobsters. The children cheered and ran out the door. When they returned, covered in mud, he almost thought he was hallucinating. Emily, the woman he had tried so hard to avoid, was standing at the door of his shop. In his memory, she had never smoked, but now she was holding a cigarette and pacing back and forth. The ground was littered with cigarette butts, clearly showing she had been waiting for a long time. The shadows of the afternoon tree swayed, and her delicate small face showed signs of exhaustion. As she stepped on the cigarette butt, extinguishing it, Emily looked him up and down, her lips painted in red, curling into a mocking smile. My late husband left me, and now you've ended up like this. You really make it so easy for me to find you. Emily was the type to seek revenge for the smallest slight, and now she had come for just that, to take revenge on him. He stared into her deep eyes, the words he had already prepared in his mind at the tip of his tongue, yet somehow they wouldn't come out. In the end, he just grabbed the children's hands and brushed past her shoulder, ignoring her. Just as he was closing the door, he didn't expect Emily to suddenly reach out. The door hit her wrist with a loud bang. Emily grunted in pain, but still wouldn't pull her hand back. Helpless, he had no choice but to open the door and try to reason with her. Go back, the old me is dead. We have nothing left between us now. Emily looked hurt, her wrist obviously injured, and she bent down to clutch her wrist in pain. As she looked down, a necklace slipped out from her collar, swaying in front of his eyes. Hanging in the middle of the necklace was his wedding ring. Why was she carrying his ring with her? Despite the pain, Emily reached through the narrow gap in the door and waved to the children. Call me Mommy. Pax and Serena immediately turned away, refusing to acknowledge her. He couldn't understand what she was trying to do. When the children used to call her Mommy, she would scold them, saying they weren't worthy of calling her that. What was she trying to pull now? After several requests, he finally agreed to talk with her. He sent the children away, leaving just Emily and him facing each other. Emily was dressed in a sharp, form-fitting skirt, lounging against the sofa with the posture of someone in control. Benjamin, don't forget, we're not divorced yet. I have the right to take the children. He sneered. What grade are the kids in this year? What do they like to eat? Are they allergic to anything? Do you know? Emily was taken aback. She realized she didn't even understand the children she had given birth to. But soon, she regained her commanding stance. As long as you come back to me, I won't have to fight for custody. You know there's nothing Emily, can't get. He looked at her, finding it somewhat amusing. I think your Gabriel probably isn't as generous as you'd like to think. Emily didn't become angry. Instead, there was a hint of triumph in her eyes. Are you jealous? If you're jealous, that means you still care about me. She stood up, grabbed him, and tried to pull him into her embrace with the force of her actions. In the past, when she came onto him like this, he couldn't help but be moved, but not anymore. He clenched his fist and placed the back of his hand against her shoulder, pulling away as if to avoid any further trouble. Miss Song, please show some respect. I will cooperate with the divorce. I don't want anything, just the custody of the children. Emily was panting, staring at him in disbelief. You think I came here to divorce you? Enough with the words. He cut her off, stopping the upcoming stream of complaints. In this marriage, Emily had always held the upper hand. Now she lowered herself, but all she wanted was to regain control, driven by a woman's possessive desire. The next morning, he heard the sound of clanging from next door. When he sent the children to school, he discovered Emily had ordered workers to move her office next door. Emily was running around, sweating as she greeted the children. Good morning. Pax and Serena turned their heads away, stubbornly ignoring her. Emily then turned and smiled at him. If you and the kids won't go back, then I'll stay. She had become just like him once was. After their marriage, he had thought of starting over in business, but after Emily had the kids, she left them all to him, feeding, changing diapers, and putting them to sleep. One child was already enough for him to handle, let alone two. He was overwhelmed, so he had to resign himself to being a stay-at-home dad. To support Emily, he not only helped with resources, but also had to learn all the household chores from scratch. His hands were often injured, old wounds covered by new ones. He treated Emily like his dream, nurturing her, but all he received was disdain. The end for a gambler is bankruptcy, and his was despair. So when there's no love, nothing matters, just like with her now. Emily started going to the kindergarten every day to wait for the children to finish school. Even though neither the kids nor Benjamin paid attention to her, she was undeterred. She began trying to cook and offered them food, but they always refused to let her in. She started showing up at parent-child events at the kindergarten, uninvited. Even if she had to sit in the farthest corner alone, she would still sit there, staring at him and the children, grinning foolishly with her infatuated look. No one would guess that she was once a high-powered CEO in the business world. For some reason, she had adopted several stray dogs. He remembered when he had once felt lonely and had adopted a stray dog for company. Even though Emily rarely came to the villa, she couldn't tolerate dog hair due to her allergies. She gave away the dog he had become attached to, refusing to tell him where it had gone no matter how much he begged. Emily held a dog in her arms, asking him from behind the fence, "Isn't it cute?" He noticed the growing number of red spots on her arms. If this had been in the past, he would have scrutinized her every action to analyze the motive behind it. Now, he didn't care anymore. Once she was done with her childish game of chasing him, she would return to being the high-powered CEO she once was. What he didn't expect was that, accustomed to a lavish life, Emily actually stayed in this poor little village for several months. Another year's mid-autumn festival arrived, the children's birthday as well. He had started preparing early. They sat in the yard, lighting birthday candles under the big round moon. The children closed their eyes and made wishes, all so sincere. "I hope Daddy is always happy. I hope Daddy makes a lot of money so he doesn't have to work so hard every day." A great sense of comfort filled his heart. Then a song suddenly interrupted the happy moment as a cart slowly rolled in. Emily sang the birthday song with heartfelt emotion. At a glance, the cart was filled with many gift boxes. After finishing the song, Emily opened her arms and smiled at the children. "These are the birthday gifts Mommy prepared for you, from 1 to 5 years old. Do you like them?" The children exchanged looks before silently starting to cut the cake. Embarrassed, Emily returned to her own yard. Without any lights, her lonely figure disappeared into the darkness, occasionally glancing his way. The moon was full, the people were not. The people were full, but the moon was not. Looking at the same moon, everyone's mood was different. Suddenly, Emily spoke up, leaning against the fence, asking Benjamin, "Ben, why did you save me back then?" Behind all his absurd actions, there was only one word driving him: love. His love for Emily probably peaked when the Sioux family fell. From a rich young master to a fallen dog, the sudden change almost crushed him. At his lowest point, he was pursued by different debt collectors. He lived like a sewer rat, surviving off dirty river water when thirsty and rummaging through garbage bins for food when hungry. Even though he tried to be careful, he was still caught by the debt collectors. They were as ruthless as executioners. When they saw he had no money, they wanted to sell his organs to repay the debt. He had already resigned himself. Since the family's downfall, he had nothing left to lose. But then Emily appeared like a goddess, saving him from disaster. From her high position, she threw money at them, warning them not to trouble him anymore. Maybe to her that money wasn't much, or she pitied him like a beggar, but to him, it was salvation. She was like a flower blooming in his decaying life. Later he learned that the flower wasn't his. He had only passed by while it bloomed. His cousin introduced him to a life abroad. She had married overseas and had been living a comfortable life. She said that with his talent, he could do great things abroad. His immigration papers were done, and he was just waiting to board the plane. He never imagined that Gabriel and he would be on the same flight. At the airport, he accidentally overheard a conversation between Gabriel and his friend. "Emily is seriously ill and urgently needs a kidney transplant. It's very likely she'll ask me to donate one if we're a match. I won't be able to refuse, so I need to leave now. Come up with an excuse to break up and throw the blame on her. I've met a rich woman abroad, and she wants to invest with me. My good days are just beginning." All Benjamin could think about was that Emily was about to die, so he ultimately gave up on boarding the plane. Fortunately, Emily and he turned out to be a match for the kidney transplant. The severe complications from the surgery almost cost him his life on the operating table. But when Emily woke up, the first thing she asked was whether the kidney had come from Gabriel. When she found out that it was Benjamin who had saved her, not Gabriel, she merely let out a quiet, "Oh." Originally, he had no ulterior motive. He had planned to recover and then go abroad. Even when Grandpa Song suddenly became critically ill and forced Emily to marry him so he could die in peace. Others envied him for marrying a woman like Emily, someone who had both beauty and wealth at the same time. They also despised him for his ruthless methods, willing to sacrifice his health just to marry into the Song family. But those were just their biased opinions, and yet Emily believed them too. In the past, he had wanted to explain, but Emily wouldn't listen. Now she had learned to listen, but he no longer wanted to explain because his story with Emily had already come to an end in that great fire. Seeing that he didn't respond, Emily gently called his name again. Ben. The starlight seemed to be shattered in her eyes, or perhaps it was the glint of tears. You've always been silent, making me overlook the fact that you too have been suffering. Ben, I owe you a life. Let me repay you with the rest of my life, please. Even though she was crying, making her even more pitiful, all he could offer her was rejection. No, recently, the number of tourists increased, and long lines would form outside his shop. There was a commotion at the door when suddenly Gabriel, followed by a group of men, barged in. They began smashing things without saying a word. The leader was none other than Gabriel. He grabbed Benjamin's collar and gritted his teeth. What is wrong with you? A grown man. Why do you have to seduce a married woman? How dare you touch my woman? He then shouted at the confused tourists. You all are still giving him money? A man without any moral compass like him should be beaten to death. Some of the tourists, swayed by his words, began whispering. The shop owner looks like such an honest man. How could he ruin someone else's marriage? I've heard online that he's close to some wealthy woman. Maybe he's being kept by a rich lady. What a shameless man. Yeah, pretending to be so noble. What's he acting for? Everyone, don't buy anything from him. Let's leave. Pax and Serena, who had just finished school, rushed into the crowd and stood in front of him. My dad is not like that. He stopped liking Mommy a long time ago. It's Mommy who's been pestering him. She's the one who's shameless. That's right, Daddy is a good man. He didn't want the children to get hurt by adult matters. Be good, go to your room. It's Daddy's responsibility to protect you. After much persuasion, they reluctantly went inside. Gabriel was about to continue slandering him, but Benjamin rubbed his palms together and threw a punch at his face. He was caught off guard and staggered backward. Just as Gabriel was about to retaliate, Emily, who had rushed to the scene, pushed her way through the crowd and unexpectedly stood in front of Benjamin. The punch landed with such force that blood slowly trickled from the corner of Emily's mouth. Gabriel panicked and fumbled. Emily, I'm sorry, you suddenly stepped out and I couldn't stop in time. Emily's eyes were cold, devoid of any emotion. Didn't I tell you we're over? Ever since Gabriel had publicly announced that good things were near, Emily, who was usually calm, had lost her temper like never before. In this lifetime, she only acknowledged one husband, Benjamin. Since Ben left, I can't lie to myself anymore. My heart clearly tells me that the one I love is him. You knew I didn't love you anymore, yet you took my money and still kept pestering me, Gabriel. The more you act like this, the more I'll hate you. Please leave. Gabriel wouldn't let go. He gripped Emily's wrist tightly. Why? You said you wanted to marry me, that you loved only me. Why the sudden change? I get it now. Is it because Benjamin threatened you? I knew it. He's just a poor beggar who's fallen from grace. What else could he want but your money? Wake up. At that moment, Gabriel's true ugly nature was fully exposed. Emily, expressionless, shook off his grip. No one is threatening me. These are my true feelings. The tourists around them gathered more and more, and many had already started recording with their phones. To prevent his shop from being affected and going out of business, Benjamin had no choice but to explain that this was all a misunderstanding. Unexpectedly, Emily took out their marriage certificate and raised it for everyone to see. Benjamin is my husband. He didn't seduce a married woman. This is all my fault. I was indecisive, and it was because of me that he had to hide in this little village. Please don't slander him. Once Emily spoke, the people around began casting strange looks at Gabriel. They sneered. They're a legitimate couple. What's a man like him doing stirring up trouble? It's really ridiculous. The shop owner is running a business with his kids, and this guy is trying to push them into the ground. He's really shameless. Just get lost already. Stop affecting our shopping. Get out. Benjamin couldn't let Gabriel leave without paying for the damage he'd caused with his destruction, so he called the police. When no one else spoke to her, Not even Benjamin told her to leave. Gabriel looked at Emily, his voice almost pleading. Emmy, I'll tell you the truth. When I was abroad, I failed at an investment and am deep in debt. The little money you gave me is not enough to fill the hole. Are you really going to watch me get beaten to death by debt collectors and do nothing? Emily furrowed her brow, her eyes scrutinizing him. So that's why you came back, isn't it? Gabriel tried to argue further, but the police had already arrived and forcefully took him away. As a party involved in the incident, Benjamin was also called in to give a statement. After leaving the police station, Emily tried to reach out to grab Benjamin's hand, but hesitated, fearing he might reject her. In the end, she withdrew her hand. Can we start over? At that moment, Emily, the once cold and aloof woman, smiled in a way that was almost pleading, her tired eyes glistening with a few stray tears. Benjamin had asked himself many times, does Emily love him? At least in this moment, she did. But unfortunately, this answer had already expired. Benjamin's smile was one of acceptance. Emily, I wish you happiness. Those words shattered Emily with ease. It was as if she saw Benjamin's figure shattering into countless pieces, something she couldn't grasp no matter how hard she tried. She thought to herself, she shouldn't push him so hard. There's still a chance. There must be another chance. Since you don't want to see me now, I'll come back another time. No need for another time. No need for next time. No need for the future. Benjamin spoke firmly, as if declaring an indisputable truth. The heart that had been torn apart by her, even if filled with blood and flesh, would not be healed. From the moment she admitted she loved Benjamin, she realized too late that she was also full of holes. Perhaps in the past, it was always Benjamin who used his empty self to fill those holes. Benjamin left, the cold wind piercing through her heart, blood flowing from every wound. It hurt so much. She now truly felt the pain of trying to warm a heart that could never be heated. Just as she had never had any warmth or affection for Benjamin, she truly felt it now as he left. She looked back several times until she imagined for a moment that Benjamin, the one she had once hated so fiercely, suddenly opened his arms. He said to her, "Let's be together." But he didn't. Emily could only watch as Benjamin took the hands of their children and walked away, never looking back. The divorce process between Emily and Benjamin went smoothly, and Emily no longer pursued him. The gentle flow of the river in the small village continued as Benjamin and the children lived their peaceful little lives. A few years later, Benjamin met a good girl. The children really liked her. They depended on her, and she loved Benjamin with all her heart, so Benjamin decided to marry her. Life after marriage was harmonious and joyful, full of life and happiness. It was strange. When Emily first learned that Benjamin had burned to death, she didn't feel the sense of relief she thought she would. Instead, it felt like a huge hole had been burned into her chest, completely empty. Benjamin had loved her so deeply. How could he dare to leave her without permission and in such an irreversible way? She forced herself not to think about it and focused on living her life with Gabriel. But the more she tried, the harder it became to hide her growing disgust for him. They argued frequently. Emily built another villa on the same spot, decorating it exactly as it used to be. She stood inside, carefully looking for traces of Benjamin's past presence. The phoenix tree still stood, but its heart was empty. Only then did she realize she had become the ridiculous person carving a mark in the river of memory to find a drifting sword. Unable to ease her longing, Emily turned the ring Benjamin had left behind into a necklace, pretending he was still by her side. When she learned Benjamin was still alive, Emily cried tears of joy. She had originally planned to act a little cold, maybe throw a tantrum, teach him a lesson, but when she actually saw him again, she became the cautious one. She was afraid that he truly didn't want her anymore, so she did everything she could think of to make up for it. But it was no use. Benjamin really didn't want Emily anymore. On the road behind her, she realized just how much she loved Benjamin, and on the road back to him, she realized no matter how much love, it was already too late. Gabriel's debt was overwhelming, and he eventually disappeared while fleeing from loan sharks. When Emily heard the news, she felt nothing. If anything, she felt a little satisfied. Emily buried herself in endless work because whenever she had a quiet moment, all she could see was Benjamin. Benjamin was getting married. The bride wasn't particularly beautiful, had an ordinary job, was just a simple, ordinary woman, and yet that made it even harder for Emily to accept. She had truly lost a man who had once loved her with all his heart. At the wedding, Pax and Serena were the flower children. It was clear the woman treated them well too. Emily actually went to the wedding that day. The woman's eyes were full of Benjamin, and Benjamin was smiling, full of happiness. She wished more than anything that it was her in the wedding dress at that moment, that she could be the happiest person in the world, but it was all just wishful thinking. Perhaps afraid Emily might go crazy and ruin the wedding, Benjamin approached her with a smile and raised a glass. He offered polite words of thanks. Was she truly content? Not at all. She even wanted to cause a scene, to steal Benjamin back. But she didn't. She genuinely wanted him to be happy. That was the one luxury she could never give him. No matter how unwilling, this was the only way. In the years that followed, Emily never married again. No other men ever appeared by her side. All these years, Emily had been secretly watching Benjamin. She even selfishly hoped that he would live an unhappy life so she could slip in and finally marry him. She clung to this obsession for decades, until one day, with white hair and wrinkled hands, she saw Benjamin walking down a street lined with fallen phoenix leaves, hand in hand with his wife and their grandchild. The woman gently adjusted Benjamin's collar, and Benjamin smiled, just like that afternoon long ago when Emily had stood before one of his paintings, stunned by his talent. Benjamin had softly called to her then, smiling warmly. Her heart clenched violently. Only now did she realize that was what people called falling in love. As they passed each other, Benjamin didn't recognize her. He laughed and chatted with his wife beside him. So we meet again. He does not know me. Dust on my face, frost in my hair. Emily felt those happy scenes spinning wildly before her eyes. Moments later, she collapsed heavily to the ground. When she returned home, she fell gravely ill and never recovered. With her final breath, she hesitated as she dialed Benjamin's number. It was still the same number. It rang for a long time. When it finally connected, Emily couldn't wait to call out, "Ben." An elderly woman's voice answered, "Honey, it's for you." Benjamin took the phone. There was silence on the other end. It was as if he already knew who it was. He simply murmured, "I'm very happy. I hope you are too." As silence returned, Emily used the last of her strength to end the call, a tear of relief falling from her eye. Emily died alone in that villa, with nothing in her hands but a will. In it, she left all her possessions to the man she had loved all her life and to their children.